Hello, BookTube. I'm Jonathan, and today we are going to be determining the best science fiction book of all time. I'm going to be going through these books one matchup at a time as we go through a March Madness style bracket in order to whittle these books down until we have a winner. So there are 32 books in the bracket, and these aren't necessarily my top 32 books. I picked books that I think would be the most popular, have the most acclaim, just so the most amount of people watching could play along. And so I'm going to be picking winners purely based on what I enjoyed the most. So if you have a differing bracket, that's great. Share your bracket, share your winner in the comments. Let's get into them. We've got 16 first round matchups to go through. And we're kicking things off with a banger. We have Dune versus The Stars My Destination. Okay, Dune, amazing world building. The themes are really just like deep and thought-provoking. And then The Stars My Destination, kind of proto-cyberpunk, a great revenge tale. I really enjoyed both of these, but I think I'm going to have to go with Dune. I think about Dune more often. I enjoyed the sequels as well. Dune goes into round two. All right, next up we have Jurassic Park versus Neuromancer. So Jurassic Park, fantastic techno thriller, inspired an amazing film. I think I like the film slightly more, but I did love the book as well. Who doesn't love sci-fi and dinosaurs? And then Neuromancer, the defining cyberpunk book. A couple of years ago, this might not have got my vote, but I recently-ish, reread this, and it made a lot more sense to me. Now that I was familiar with more sci-fi, more cyberpunk, I was kind of able to penetrate through some of the difficulty that book presents in terms of like the world building, the language and stuff, and I enjoyed it a lot more. So I'm going to give the win to Neuromancer. Okay. For our third matchup, Frankenstein versus A Fire Upon the Deep. Ooh. Okay, so two very different books. Frankenstein, and a legend of the genre, 1818, the first edition came out. I love Mary Shelley's prose. I love the story of Frankenstein. This blew me away. This is a classic that holds up really, really well. A Fire Upon the Deep. On paper, a book that I think that I would like, because I like space opera, I like big ideas. It's got a little bit of hard sci-fi in it, but the story and the characters just didn't quite click for me the way it does for some people, because I know some people absolutely love this. So I liked it, but not as much as Frankenstein. Frankenstein moves on, if I can click the right buttons, into the next round. Okay, coming up next, Solaris versus Fahrenheit 451. Okay, Stanislav Lem. I really like his approach to his sort of like philosophical, sort of large scale approach to sci-fi. Like, what are humans doing in this incredible universe? What are we even trying to understand a thing like the strange water planet of Solaris? And then Fahrenheit 451, one of the classic dystopian works. Ray Bradbury's prose, just phenomenal. Just a really poetic, beautiful writer. I like both of these a lot, but I'm a Solaris guy. Solaris moves on. All right. Okay, here we've got a modern book and a classic book. We've got The Martian by Andy Weir. Project Hail Mary could be here as well, but you know, don't want too much recency bias, although I'll stand by Project Hail Mary being great. But anyway, The Martian is great too. MacGyver in space, hard sci-fi, fun, fast-paced, great story. And then Roadside Picnic, a book that I appreciate more and more over time. Boris and Arkady Strugatsky, just really sort of philosophical, thought-provoking, heavy science fiction, this kind of first contact, alien remnant storyline. Yeah, it's one that stays with you. I really, really like it. But do I like it as much as The Martian? I know Martian's kind of popcorn sci-fi, but I don't think that's necessarily a derogatory thing, especially when it's done this well. I'm going with The Martian. All right, up next. Okay, we got two modern books here. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky and The Three-Body Problem. So I'm going to... So Children of Time, space opera, spiders, two intertwining storylines, comes together in a fantastic way. Love the ending of Children of Time. And then The Three-Body Problem. If I could do a series as a whole, The Remembrance of Earth's Past, it's great. I really like all three books, but especially The Dark Forest and Death's End. The Three-Body Problem. It's a good intro to a great series, but as an individual book, is it better than Children of Time? I do love me some hard sci-fi, but I'm going with Children of Time. All right, that brings us to, we'll scroll down the bracket here, preview a little bit of some of the books to come. Starship Troopers versus The Handmaid's Tale. I recently watched the I don't know why I keep on getting that wrong. Starship Troopers. Well done, Jonathan. Film for the first time recently and liked it a lot. Did I like the book as much as The Handmaid's Tale? Military sci-fi versus dystopian sci-fi. Well, The Handmaid's Tale, I wasn't sure I was going to like it at first, but it slowly won me over until the end where I was just fully invested in the storyline. My heart was beating out of my chest at the end of the book. The Handmaid's Tale moves on. Okay. Parable of the Sower versus 1984. Okay, two kind of dystopian-ish books. Parable of the Sower is a little more post-apocalyptic. I really like Octavia E. Butler. Her prose is interesting. It's very sort of straightforward and matter of fact, and she sort of lets the subject matter, the themes, kind of like do the talking, leave the impact. Whereas 1984, just amazing world building. The themes were relevant when it was written. The themes were relevant today. I love the story. What a powerful ending. 1984. Both great books, but I've got to go with 1984. All right, up next, Ender's Game versus Blindsight. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so Ender's Game, kind of military sci-fi. There's interesting tactics and strategy, good characters, good philosophy. Some people feel it reads like YA because it does have young characters, but I don't know. I think there's some thematic depth here. I'm a pretty big fan of Ender's Game. And then Blindsight, hard sci-fi, confronting sci-fi. It's a little bit bleak, nihilistic, maybe. Some of the conclusions, ooh, they don't necessarily make you feel good, do they? Very thought-provoking book. A little hard to get into, but when it came together, it really came together. Pretty massive fan of both of these, but I'm going to go with Ender's Game. We're making tough choices in round one already. Okay, up next we have The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. So I really like The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin, but The Left Hand of Darkness didn't quite click for me as much. And then Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, not quite my favorite Philip K. D book. That would be I always say KD instead of K. Dick. PKD. PKD, not quite my favorite from him. Ubik is my favorite, but Dados is great as well. Androids, it's thematic, it's weird, it's surreal, asks a lot of questions. My kind of sci-fi. I'm going with Androids. All right, up next, Snow Crash versus House of Suns. Okay, so we've got cyberpunk and space opera, two of my favorite genres. Neil Stephenson, very clever. This book is a little bit different to some of his other works. It's a little funny, a little satirical, but some very interesting science. And he predicted some very interesting things. He predicted like VR goggles, like almost down to the exact specifications, like 15 to 20 years before VR goggles came out. Pretty crazy stuff. But House of Suns, this is Alistair Reynolds at his best. I'm a Reynolds man. I love space opera. I love hard sci-fi. The creativity, the scale here, just phenomenal. House of Suns. It wouldn't be a Words in Time video without some love to Reynolds and House of Suns. Okay, next up, Station 11, Brave New World. So we've got another sort of post-apocalyptic and dystopian battle. Emily St. John Mandel with this kind of poetic post-apocalyptic tale about people and art and meaning. And, you know, sometimes this softer sci-fi doesn't resonate with me because I do like big, hard sci-fi ideas. But man, this book just overwhelmed me with emotion. I really, really connected with this book a lot. And then Brave New World, another one of the dystopian classics. Another one that is kind of really relevant today. It's very prescient writing from Aldous Huxley. But did I connect with it on the emotional level that I did Station 11? No, Station 11. It's just one of my favorites. It's got to go through. All right, up next, Hyperion versus The Road. Dan Simmons versus Cormac McCarthy. Two big names here. Now, I'm a Hyperion guy, but for better or worse, in the comments, I'm more of a Fall of Hyperion guy. I love the sequel, The Fall of Hyperion. They exist as a duology. It's hard to separate them. But if I'm going just Hyperion, I don't know. Is it enough to beat The Road? I love The Road as well. One of the best post-apocalyptic stories of all time. If I could go the whole Cantos, it would be Hyperion. If I could go the Fall of Hyperion, it would be the Fall of Hyperion. But The Road, I don't know. It might, as a standalone book, The Road, just too strong. All right, up next, The Player of Games versus Foundation. Okay, Ian M. Banks, space opera, the Culture series, all of the books are kind of standalone but connected within this um, universe that he created. And then Foundation, Asimov, one of his most famous works. I like the Foundation series, especially the first book. I think the stories, the interconnected stories within that series are the strongest, or my favorite ones are in that first book, Foundation. So this is a tough choice. I think I'm leaning towards Foundation. I just like the ideas. Each of the stories is just very clever. They all kind of build towards something very interesting. Even though I didn't love the sequels as much, Foundation, I think I got to go with Foundation over the Player Games. But that was a tough choice. All right, up next, 2001: A Space Odyssey versus Slaughterhouse-Five. Oh no, this is two of my favorite authors, Arthur C. Clarke, Kurt Vonnegut. Why are you doing this to me, bracket? This isn't fair. In round one as well. I didn't expect to have to make such hard decisions in round one. Okay. 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of the best films ever, one of the best sci-fi books ever. Arthur C. Clarke, his prose is underrated. The ideas are impeccable. The science is phenomenal. But Kurt Vonnegut's my favorite writer, and Slaughterhouse-Five is one of his best. Ooh. All right, the doorbell ringing gave me a temporary reprieve from this tough decision, but it did not absolve me of its responsibility. How can I choose? You know what? These are probably my second favorite books from each of these authors. But these authors are so good that still means they're like 5-star books. I'm gonna have to go with Slaughterhouse-Five. I'm sorry, Clarke. I can't believe you didn't make it past round one, but you happened to run into Vonnegut. And our last one that's getting cut off a little bit. Good job, website. Anyway, it is The Forever War by Joe Haldeman versus The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. The Forever War, one of the best books in military fiction. Some really interesting ideas to do with time relativity and society, and a great anti-war novel. And then Hitchhiker's Guide, possibly the funniest science fiction book that has ever been written. Some cool sci-fi ideas in there as well. I read the second book and I still enjoyed it, but started to find it a little bit more sad than funny. Let me know if you think I should keep going with the Hitchhiker's books. But anyway, I love the first one. The first one is great. I think it ekes out The Forever War. Hitchhiker's Guide moves on. All right, let's go back to the top of the bracket. We have made it to the round of 16. And we're kicking things off with a tough one. Okay, first matchup in the round of 16, Dune versus Neuromancer. Wow. I'm at a loss for words. Dune, okay, so Dune. I think I like the characters more in Dune. I think the theme stayed with me more in Dune. The world building, building is both in great of them, is great in both of them. But Dune, I don't know, it's just like a sort of a richer place. I was more interested in reading the Dune sequels, because I did read the Dune sequels, where I didn't with Neuromancer. But Neuromancer is just really unique. It's fun, it's crazy, it's out there, it defined a genre. I think if I read Dune, I would enjoy it even more, like I did with the reread with Neuromancer. So I'm gonna go Dune, but I could have gone either way on this one. Let me know which you guys voted for. Oh, another tough one. Okay, Frankenstein versus Solaris. These are my two of my all-time favorites here. Mary Shelley. I really resonated with Frankenstein. At first, I found it a little tricky to get into the prose just because I hadn't read an old classic in a while, but once I did, I was just so fully immersed. And then Solaris has a great atmosphere. The philosophy is really interesting. It does dry up just a teeny tiny bit in parts, but that is such a nitpick. But at this stage of the bracket, we might have to rely on some nitpicks. I'm going with Frankenstein, but those are two of my favorites. Frankenstein moves on to the quarterfinals. All right, up next, The Martian and Children of Time. Ooh, two great modern ones. Interesting. If this was Project Hail Mary, I might lean Project Hail Mary. I like The Martian and Project Hail Mary. Hail Mary a very similar amount. I think I like the setting more of Mars, but I think the scope and the characters, especially the character relationships in Project Hail Mary, I like more than The Martian. But it's not against PHM, it's against Children of Time. Children of Time, it's a book that I thought was good for 2/3 of it, and then great for the final third. I thought it tied everything together in a very satisfying way, and I just really connected with this book emotionally. Another one where I'm pretty split on, but I'm gonna go Children of Time just for the ending. How much that ending means to me. All right, The Handmaid's Tale vs. 1984, two of the dystopian classics. Okay, I feel like The Handmaid's Tale maybe starts a little slow and then ramps up, whereas 1984 kind of spends some time world building. There's like some little slow points, but man, that ending. Both of these books have fantastic endings, actually. I don't think you can really go wrong with either of these. 1984 is maybe more quotable. Probably remember more specific lines from 1984, especially that final line. Sheesh, what a final line. Two great books. I've got to go 1984. All right, up next, Ender's Game versus Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Orson Scott Card versus Philip K. Dick. Ender's Game, I think, is just fantastic from a plotting point of view. Thematically, it's rich. Another one with a great ending. When we're talking about books with great endings, Ender's Game has to be up there. Whereas Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Great title. If this was a title bracket, this might waltz. This might be Hitchhiker's Guide and Do Androids meeting up in the final, would be my prediction. Not my favorite PKD, as I mentioned. I do like Ubik more. And it's an ending where you're like, this is interesting. It makes you think. But did I love the ending as much as I loved Ender's Game's ending? No, I did not. Ender's Game moves on. All right. House of Suns versus Station 11. All right, these are two of my favorites. And the complete opposite ends, or not quite opposite ends, but like pretty far apart on the sci-fi spectrum. House of Suns, Alistair Reynolds, hard sci-fi, space opera, lots of big creative ideas, advanced technology. Whereas Station 11, a flu breaks out, and then people kind of wander around and try and find meaning in life after a apocalypse. Pretty soft sci-fi, one that connected with me emotionally, but very different. Yeah, these are two of my favorites, but I think at the end of the day, I'm just a Reynolds guy. I'm reading his Revelation Space Universe prequel series, prequel trilogy, the Prefect Dreyfus Emergencies at the moment, and just absolutely loving it. House of Suns. It's got to be House of Suns. Moving on. All right, up next, The Road versus Foundation. Okay, so we've got post-apocalyptic versus Foundation, kind of space opera, but it's kind of really just people talking about ideas, but they're very interesting ideas. I do like, I think Asimov's writing is a little bit dry, but the ideas are fantastic. Whereas Cormac McCarthy's prose, very different, very stylistic. He doesn't use, quotation marks or much punctuation. Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, at times it feels sort of like simple and dry and sparse, and then at other times it's just incredibly poetic and powerful and impactful. And yeah, reading The Road is a very emotional reading experience. It's got to be The Road. The Road is moving on to the quarterfinals. And with our final matchup, Slaughterhouse-Five versus Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Okay, this is interesting. Probably two of the funniest science fiction writers, but writers that operate more in that sort of amusing, satirical space within subgenre. Kind of a subgenre of science fiction. Who am I going to go with? It's got to be Kurt Vonnegut. Kurt Vonnegut's my favorite writer of all time. And not everything that he writes is science fiction. But Slaughterhouse-Five, it's got aliens, time travel, all sorts of weird stuff. There's a lot of wackiness going on in this book. It's absurd, but it's just as poignant as it is absurd. Slaughterhouse-Five moves on to the quarterfinals. Okay. Things are going to pick up pace now, because now that we're through the quarterfinals, that's only 4 matchups. So let me know if anybody has the same bracket as me up to this point. That would be pretty wild. Let me know how similar your brackets are. Anyway, we have 2 heavyweights here. Dune versus Frankenstein. Okay, I'm thinking it's got to be Frankenstein, because I do really like Dune. And it was a while since I read it. I read the sequels fairly recently, but the first book, Dune, I read a while ago. I do remember thinking that it was a little bit dry, pun intended, at times took a little bit to get into it. I think, especially back then when I was a little bit more of a plot-driven reader, there is an inciting incident that is described to you on the back, the blurb of the book, which doesn't happen until like over 300 pages into Dune. So I think if you're someone, especially if you come from a fantasy background, you love all that world building and details and info, you're probably lapping up those first few hundred pages. But younger Jonathan kind of wanted to get into the, the meat of the story a bit quicker. Older, more patient Jonathan might have a better appreciation for that on a reread, but I'm only speculating. Whereas Frankenstein's near perfect. No quibbles with Frankenstein. Frankenstein to the semifinals. All right. Now we have Children of Time versus 1984. All right. Modern versus classic. I do love space opera. I do love hard sci-fi. I really emotionally connected with Children of Time, but it's not perfect. I do have some minor quibbles, whereas I might with 1984 as well, but the high points are just so high. The influence, the impact, it's going to be tough to beat 1984. 1984 to the semifinals. All right. Wow. Okay. Ender's Game versus House of Suns. Ender's Game, kind of space opera, but I'd say it's more military sci-fi. But there's a little bit of overlap here. House of Suns, though, it's a unique story. We have 1,000 characters. This character clones herself 1,000 times, sends those clowns. She cloned herself 1,000 times, and I forgot to mention she was a clown. So there's 1,000 clowns. No, I'm just being silly. Not clowns, they are clones. Sends them out into the galaxy, and they meet up every 200,000 years for a reunion. And around their 31st or 2nd reunion, so like, what's that, 6 million years in the future, this clan of clones gets attacked. Like, I'm just setting up the beginning of the story, and it's already just completely out there. And I love that about Reynolds. I love just how wildly imaginative he is. That is my kind of science fiction, and that is why House of Suns is moving on to the semifinals. All right, up next, The Road versus Slaughterhouse-Five. Both are a little dark, a little heavy, but Slaughterhouse-Five, it kind of has that comedic absurdity to it. Nothing funny in The Road. Not too many chuckles, guffaws, or hee-hees you will come across in The Road. That's a pretty, I teared up a little bit towards the end of The Road, which is a good thing. If a book can make me cry, I'm probably going to score it pretty highly because I'm not easily emotionally manipulated. If you make me cry, you genuinely emotionally impacted me. But I don't know. I don't know if any author's books have meant more to me in my life than Kurt Vonnegut's books. The Road, so it goes. Sorry, Road. Slaughterhouse-Five takes the 4th and final semi-final slot. All right, let's shift our bracket over here a little bit. We've made it to the semi-finals. Heavy hitters remain. Who's going to be our champion? Well, we have Frankenstein versus 1984. Interesting. So I read Frankenstein for the first time just a few years ago, 1984, a few years before that. These are both 10 out of 10 books. I would score both of these a 10. They both might be in my top 10 of all time. These are really strong books. I think I'm leaning 1984 just because of how powerful the ending is. I don't think I've ever finished a book and just felt like such a gut punch, like a sledgehammer to the soul, just like a nuclear bomb went off in my heart, and it didn't feel good, but it's powerful. It's powerful art. It's important art. It's sad. At this point, knocking my favorites out of the bracket is kind of making me sad. But we're going to be positive. We're going to focus on the love that I'm giving to 1984. 1984 to the grand final. Where the seeding was could have made a little bit of a difference in terms of how far each book went. But eventually, you got to win. You're going to meet up at some point in the bracket, whether it's the semifinals or finals. And 1984 is in the finals. All right, here is our second semifinal. House of Suns versus Slaughterhouse-Five. Alistair Reynolds, Kurt Vonnegut, two of my all-time favorites. House of Suns is my favorite Reynolds book. Slaughterhouse-Five might be my second favorite Kurt Vonnegut book. That shouldn't really count against it just because of how much I love Cat's Cradle. Not really sci-fi, but Deadeye Dick is up there as well. House of Suns, when I read it, I've told this story before, I was reading it, I was getting towards the end, and my wife asked me, "Are you enjoying your book?" To which I responded, "I think it might be the best book." I don't think I've ever had as much fun reading a book as I have with House of Suns. Around every 50 pages, there was a sci-fi concept that just blew me away. I could not believe what I was reading. It is fun, it is immersive, it's kind of like eye-opening in terms of like scientific concepts. It's everything that I want in a science fiction book. Did it affect my life and sort of me as a person as much as Kurt Vonnegut did? Probably not, like overall, but just like as a science fiction book, I don't know if it can be beat. Wow. Sorry, Kurt Vonnegut. You know I love you. House of Suns to the final. And here we have our grand final. 1984 by George Orwell. House of Suns by Alastair Reynolds. Who is going to take it? Let me know. Let me know what made it to your final, and let me know in the comments who would win, or who you would pick to win between 1984 and House of Suns. So 1984, it is kind of sci-fi. You know, sometimes we kind of group post-apocalyptic and dystopian into sci-fi without there being much. But there are some interesting bits of sci-fi world building and technology within 1984. The writing is fantastic. Fantastic. The themes are important. I mentioned that ending was just phenomenal. Really affected me intellectually and emotionally. House of Suns, though, is just sort of like an out-of-body experience. If you have a similar taste in sci-fi to me, where you like those big ideas, there's just some crazy stuff in House of Suns, man. Like, there is a chase scene between spaceship that takes place over tens of thousands of years. And you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. It doesn't feel slow. It feels like you are watching like these Formula One cars chase each other around the track, except you're in space. And the time scale is just mind-boggling. I love that kind of stuff. This is my kind of sci-fi. House of Suns takes the dub. The greatest science fiction book of all time, as determined by me, is House of Suns by Alastair Reynolds. So there you go. We completed the bracket. Let me know your thoughts. Obviously, it's very subjective. This is just my opinion based on my personal preferences while reading science fiction. But I hope you had a good time going through it. It's a little bit more stressful than I anticipated, but I had fun too. I hope you guys had fun watching the video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima, A New Eden, Half-Ogre, Zakawe, Samil, Colin, and the buzzer-beating Bamsis. And you can find more sci-fi content, I'm gonna guess, over here.